Are you a work-at-home mom that struggles with perfectionism? Don't worry, you're not alone. But we're going to dive into it today and see if there's anything we can do to help you out a little bit. Hey there, amazing work-at-home moms. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Laurel and I'm with the Mom Desk Club, and we have been diving into all things work-at-home mom guilt this season. So whether it's identifying mom guilt, finding ways to spend more time with your family, all those different kinds of topics. And today we're going to be diving into a really fun one, which I'm sure you're all super excited about, and it's dealing with perfectionism. So buckle up and let's get started. So before we dive into perfectionism, I think it's really helpful to kind of establish what perfectionism is. The Merriam-Webster dictionary says a disposition to regard anything short of perfection as unacceptable. I think that's kind of probably a really great summary of what it is, especially as work-at-home moms. I think it can be so easy for us to get trapped in this mindset of perfectionism, especially when I think a lot of work-at-home moms are kind of your typical type A personalities. So it's very hard to let go of perfectionism because you just want to do everything right and you want to do it right all the time. So there are a few different types of perfectionism, which I thought was kind of interesting. There is self-oriented perfectionism and socially prescribed perfectionism. So to me, I would take that to mean self-oriented perfectionism would be where you are prescribing this perfect mentality on yourself. You've decided what perfect is. You want to achieve that for your own standards. Whereas socially prescribed perfectionism to me would be stuff that the culture has maybe placed on you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little later on as we dive into social media and how that affects perfectionism, which I think is super interesting. But for now, we're just going to keep in mind that there's self-oriented and socially prescribed perfectionism. And so those can be helpful when you're trying to examine maybe why you're struggling with perfectionism. Is this something that you're placing on yourself, or is this something that you feel is placed upon you? I think it's also really important to dig into the effects of perfectionism. I'm sure that you are no stranger to these effects because being work-at-home moms, I think we actually experience a lot of the same symptoms, and you might feel really alone, but you're not. So a few of the effects that can come from a perfectionist mindset would be increased stress and anxiety, a negative impact on mental health, and a hindrance to productivity and creativity. I know for myself that I have felt that so many times because when you have increased stress and anxiety due to trying to achieve a specific standard, I feel like that rolls over into everything. So that does have a negative impact on your mental health, and it is a hindrance to your productivity and your creativity. So it's kind of just this, I've often felt like sometimes I'll get stuck in this cycle. It's this repetitive cycle that never stops. And so I think as work-at-home moms, it's our job to recognize when we get stuck in that cycle and what we need to do to break it so that we can continue doing our job well, continue loving life, living life, being there for the people that are so important to us. And we have to be willing to stop the cycle and figure out how to do that. I think one of the things that stands out to me is the illusion of perfectionism. You know, people make it so easy to hide our own imperfections because we don't want anybody to know about them. And so we hide those things about ourselves because we're afraid that nobody will like us as much, or because we won't look like we have it all together. And so we keep those kinds of things kind of secret, hidden. We don't like to share it. But perfectionism is an illusion. I always try to remember that even if I'm imagining somebody else's life and I'm imagining it as perfect and their kids are cooperating and their house is always clean, I then try to switch gears, and I'm not trying to put people down. So don't be all like, oh, she's just, placing all these negative things on people. But I try to then imagine them as, okay, let's imagine that they're having a hard day and their kids are fighting and they're not feeling very good. So the kitchen is really messy and they're ordering takeout for dinner because they don't have enough energy to keep up with that. Obviously, I'm not wishing that on them, but it helps to kind of just remember that anything you're experiencing, chances are the work-at-home mom down the road is also experiencing that, and it helps you to have a little bit more compassion to realize that they are under the exact same burden as you with different strengths and struggles and weaknesses and all those kinds of things, but they're going to be under the exact same pressures in a different format, and that we're all human and that we're all experiencing the same thing. And so perfectionism is quite the illusion. I also think it's really important to analyze the fact that social media has such a huge impact on perfectionism. And I don't understand why, because we all know what goes into creating content. Like, it's not a shocker that people are taking things and shoving them off their desk so that their desk looks clean. Where did I come up with that analogy? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because my desk was a wreck before I hit record. I cleared everything off. It's over on the table right now. And as soon as I'm done recording, I'm literally going to bring all my stacks back and put them in nice organized piles so that I can find everything when I need it. Maybe. So social media has this really strange way of causing us to think that everybody else is perfect and we're not. And the truth is that social media is a liar. Now, I am personally not ever going to show up with a really messy desk on video. There's just no need. You don't need to see all my piles to know that they're there. It doesn't make for a clean look. It's not going to capture anybody's attention. I don't know, it might capture people's attention. If you think it would capture your attention more to see my desk messy, let me know. But for now, I'm going to clean my desk off. I'm going to present a clean front. But just know, everybody is dealing with piles. So it's no surprise on social media when people are clearing out a corner of their room so they can take a picture of their child and make it look really cute. Some people, I am convinced, live in these really nice, clean homes. I think that they have a really high standard and that they keep it. I'm just not that person. And so I think it's always just helpful to remind yourself that where they have a high standard, they have a low standard. So if cleaning is their high standard and they always show a clean home on social media, that's fine, but they've got a low standard somewhere. There's somewhere where they're dropping the ball, and I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean there's somewhere where they're not able to keep everything up to a perfect standard. So I think if you can look at social media with that kind of realistic lens, not that they have to show you, they don't have to show you their messy rooms or their junk drawers or the areas in their life that aren't perfect, but you've got to know they're there. And so that really helps when you're looking at social media. I think it's also really important to recognize and challenge those perfectionistic thoughts. So one of the things that I have struggled with before is there are a few moms on Facebook and on Instagram that I follow who I really admire. They have a really unique personality and they put forth that personality onto Facebook or onto social media and in their reels. And you know, there was one night that I got so frustrated because her hair always looked nice and her outfits always looked nice. Even if she's wearing sweatpants, you know, she always looked cute. And her house always looked clean. And she had a really nice house, you could tell just from the background. And I was slumped in jealousy. That's just kind of the point of it. And don't mind the flies. We've had an unseasonably warm spring. Well, it's not even spring. It should not be spring yet, but it is. And so the flies have just never gone away. But the point is, I was slumped in my own character flaw. I was allowing myself to get caught up in what I imagined about her life and what I imagined about who she was as a person, and I was allowing those thoughts to put myself down and treat myself poorly, and there was no need for that. And so I had to take a minute and I had to call that out, and I just had to say, you know what? I am being petty and jealous here. This has nothing to do with her. She is an amazing woman, and I'm so impressed by all the things she has accomplished in life, and I'm amazed by the things that she's doing and the people she's reaching and the message that she's sharing. She's awesome. That doesn't make me less awesome. I'm different. I have a different thing. I have more children than she has. I probably have a smaller home, and so I'm trying to maintain huge amounts of mess in a small home. Sometimes it helps when I am recognizing and challenging perfectionism to also recognize that I don't have the same advantages or disadvantages as somebody else. And I'm not looking at that as a way of comparing, because the comparison game can be really tricky too. It's just helpful if you can look at something as if you were your best friend. Okay, so let's say your best friend comes to you and is really upset because she is putting herself down about somebody else. You can say, listen, you don't have family around. I've heard her talk on her YouTube channel. I'm making up somebody, by the way. I've heard her talk on her YouTube channel about how her mom and her sister come and help her with their kids multiple times a week, and you don't have your family around. Obviously, that's going to make an impact. Or they put their kids in school every week, which is a great decision for them, but you're homeschooling your kids. Your kids are home all day, every day. Of course, your house is messier because you've got people in it all day. Sometimes it's helpful not to compare, but to just be realistic and say, listen, you have different advantages and disadvantages, and that's going to lend towards creating a realistic view of life and not getting slumped in perfectionism, because you're not going to be perfect. Nobody expects you to be. And when you can recognize and be realistic about those standards, it can help a little bit. At least it helps me. So let's jump into a couple of practical strategies that you can use to help guard against perfectionism, because the fact is you can't control everything in the known universe, and I think that's where perfectionism tends to really get us, is that we think that we can control everything. While you can't control things, there are things you can do to help you prepare. I often feel like I am an over preparer by nature, and so I'm constantly thinking of ways that I can prepare in advance to help keep from having issues later on down the road. So one of the things you can do is you can prioritize tasks and goals. Make a list in your head or on paper and put everything in an order of what is priority. So oftentimes I find my brain going through this whole cycle of things. First, I need to put in the laundry, and then after I put in the laundry, I'm going to come up and I'm going to switch around the dishwasher, pull out the clean stuff, put in the dirty stuff, and start that so that those two things can run while I'm doing other things. Then I'm going to get one child started on their school. Then I'm going to go sit down and put an email in while she's doing that and while all the other things are working. My brain is constantly on this overdrive, but when you can learn how to and set a habit for prioritizing tasks and what you need to get started in order to keep everything else kind of flowing nicely throughout your day, it can help. Doesn't mean you're going to get it perfect, doesn't mean you're going to get it right, and on those days you're going to have to give yourself grace. But when you can learn how to prioritize tasks, it can help keep your day flowing. Another thing that I found really helps is breaking tasks down into smaller, manageable pieces. So if you have a really big task coming up, break it down into small pieces and realize that that's all you have to do is do the small bites, a little bit every day, and eventually you will get the whole thing taken care of. Another thing you can do is implement different time management techniques. Now, we have covered some of this stuff in some past videos, so I'll make sure and put some links down in the descriptions for some of the videos that might help with time management and prioritizing tasks and all those kinds of things. But by implementing time management techniques, you can help yourself get through a specific amount of tasks or specific tasks, and sometimes it can be really healthy to have kind of a self-imposed deadline that helps you to get something done in a specific amount of time instead of focusing on being perfect at that task. So one of the things that I think about is before we hired an office assistant to help me with our home business that we run, I had to sort images out, cull photos. When you're a photographer, culling pictures is kind of a big part of the game. You spend a lot of time doing it. And I would get so caught up sitting there and I would take forever and it would take me such a long time to get the job done and it was so frustrating. And finally my husband was like, you need to set a timer. You've got 10 minutes. That's it. When that timer goes off, you're done. And that self-imposed deadline helped me to get rid of the perfectionist mentality and attitude and focus just on getting the job done. So when you have some good time management techniques, that can help. And finally, I think the last thing that we can dive into is overcoming the fear of failure. I think especially as work-at-home moms who have a very specific goal-oriented mentality where we want to achieve goals and we want to meet deadlines and we want to do things with excellence, sometimes we're afraid of failure. And the fact is, the only actual failure is not trying at all. And I know that sounds super cliche, but I've tried to remind myself that when I get to the end of my life, I am not going to feel regret about attempting things and it not working. But I am going to feel regret about the things I didn't attempt, the things I didn't try, the things I didn't at least invest in and see if it happened or not. So I think it can be really helpful, especially if you focus on perfectionism, to just continue to remind yourself that failure is okay. Failure is not going to hurt you. It might be uncomfortable and it might take some time to get used to, but failure is not going to be the end of the world. It only gives you more tools to know how to do something better, different, or to change your strategy. That's all. All right, so we've got some frequently asked questions about perfectionism, especially in regards to being a work-at-home mom, and I think it can be really helpful to kind of see what other people are concerned about and feeling apprehensive about and see how that can then roll over into your own life. One, because then you know you're not alone. But two, then you also get to kind of explore and answer together. So I often compare myself to other work-at-home moms who seem to have it all together, which only fuels my perfectionist tendencies. How can I stop comparing myself to others and embrace my unique journey without feeling inadequate? I think that sums up exactly how we're all feeling a lot of days, is because we see other people doing things and we think that just because they're doing it on a specific timeline in a specific way that we need to be able to meet those same standards, and if they can get it done in 6 months, then why can't I get it done in 6 months or less because I'm amazing? The fact is, we are all on specific journeys. Sometimes I think it is helpful, for me anyway, because I am stuck up in my head all the time, to imagine their journey. So imagine what they're going through. What types of things could they maybe possibly be experiencing? Are they experiencing family drama? Well, that could be playing a role in things. Or do they have extra help that comes in? Does their husband make a lot more money than mine does? Not a bad thing. Completely just part of the journey. But what if their husband does make a lot more money than they do? Well, then maybe that's able to help fund some of their hobbies and their passions and their businesses and their careers. That helps. It's just part of it. Or maybe they just came in at the right time, at the right place, and somehow their business grew faster than mine, or they were able to do something better than I was. Or maybe they put in more work. I don't know. Maybe they prioritized something higher than I did, and so they have a better outcome because they prioritized it. So like realistically, my home is not organized. I am not naturally an organized person. I know this about myself. It's a personality trait that I have been experiencing and working through for decades. It's just not my strong point. And I do have these high hopes and these dreams of being organized someday in my future, but I'm not right now. And there are some women out there who are so organized. Their home is always organized, and I could get stuck in a self-pity party and feel frustrated because their house always looks better than mine. Or I could just embrace the fact that they have a completely different personality than I do. Maybe they are way better at prioritizing their tasks, and they're able to keep their home cleaner than I am because they are better at prioritizing it. I don't prioritize keeping my house clean because that is not one of the big things that is important to me. It's like down on the totem pole here, not top priority. I've got plenty of other things that are higher up on my priority list, and that's just part of it. That doesn't make anybody else better. It doesn't make me worse. It doesn't make me better because my priorities are different than somebody else. It means that we all have differences, and that's what makes it all unique, and it makes the world beautiful, and it makes all of us special and unique in our own way. So I hope that as you go about your week, you're able to kind of recognize perfectionist tendencies when they slip in, call them out for the liars that they are, and walk in freedom, knowing that as long as you're always skilling up, as long as you're doing things, for me, it's for doing things for the glory of the Lord. I am doing it to please Him. I'm doing it to improve my own life. I'm doing things to be a better steward of the world that I live in. And as long as I'm meeting those standards, I'm doing good. So I hope that you have a wonderful week. I hope that you have a great work week, and I hope you have a great time with your family this week, whatever you have planned for your schedule. And I look forward to checking in with you next week as we continue going through Work at Home Mom Guilt. Bye.